A significant pattern shift is developing across the United Kingdom. And if you've been following the forecast models over the past few days, you will have noticed something rather interesting building to our northeast, a large Scandinavian high-pressure system. The question isn't whether it arrives. The question is how much influence it has on our weather and whether it brings the sort of cold easterly winds we haven't seen properly since the beast from the east back in 2018. Let me show you what is happening right now, and then we'll work through what's coming. Right now across the country, conditions vary considerably. The Wirral saw heavy snow earlier today. Meanwhile, southern England is looking at top temperatures around 10 degrees Celsius. That's the contrast we're dealing with. Across England and Wales, there have been sunny spells through the afternoon with rain clearing northwards through the day, but that milder air from the south is temporary. Rain is already moving back in tonight from the southeast. The immediate picture for the rest of today and tonight is fairly straightforward. There's low cloud across eastern parts, mist and fog in places, and that could be quite stubborn. It is the sort of murky weather that makes driving conditions difficult, particularly across central and eastern areas. The low-pressure system that brought blustery, showery weather through yesterday is filling, becoming less intense. That means the winds are slackening off, and that's why we're seeing this low cloud and fog developing. Western and southwestern parts, mainly around the Irish Sea, will continue to see showers. Some of them could be heavy. There is a swathe of showers pushing northwards across parts of England and Wales into Scotland through the afternoon. Away from the west and southwest, many of those showers will clear, turning drier with some breaks in the cloud, particularly towards the west. Some sunshine breaking through, eastern areas staying under that cloud. If you're stuck under the low cloud, it's going to feel pretty cold, even though temperatures are about what you expect for mid-January, generally peaking from around 6 to 7 Celsius in the north to around 9, possibly 10 Celsius towards the south. A fairly damp end to the day across some central and eastern parts of Scotland. Could be a bit of sleet and snow over the higher ground, but most of that rain clears through overnight. Then apart from a few showers here and there, lots of dry weather for a time. But thick cloud across eastern parts, and again that thick cloud could lower to some murkiness. Central and eastern parts in particular likely to have difficult driving conditions. Poor visibility early Sunday morning, further west, clearer skies. But even with clear skies, we could see a few patches of fog developing and a touch of frost here or there. Later in the night, more rain and even thicker cloud coming in from the southeast. Temperatures dropping a few degrees below freezing in some western and northwestern parts where we get those clearer skies. For many where we get that thicker cloud continuing, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Sunday starts wet across some central and southeastern parts of England. That rain then slowly makes progress further northwards. It's going to affect everywhere from the West Country up through eastern Wales, up towards northern England, and then later eastern parts of Scotland. Elsewhere, actually a fair amount of fine weather, much of Scotland avoiding the rain, albeit a few showers for western parts. Much of Northern Ireland also staying largely dry, just a few showers perhaps towards the east. Some drier, brighter weather developing across parts of East Anglia and maybe Kent, possibly even towards London later in the afternoon. Where you are under the cloud and rain, it's going to feel pretty cold. In other places where we get any sunshine breaking through, not too bad considering it is the middle of January. Now, that is the immediate forecast. But the bigger story is what is developing for later next week and into the final days of January. There is a huge Scandinavian high-pressure system building. We've seen this within the model output for much of this week, and it continues to remain there. We are very confident that this Scandinavian high will be building in through the coming days. The question is whether it nudges more towards us and directly impacts our weather by the end of next week. Initially, it's not going to directly impact us too much. What it will do is push the jet stream southwards. It is going to slow down the movement of low-pressure systems and potentially prevent them from moving eastwards into the North Sea. That could mean some areas might stay dry, but other areas could get quite a pasting as we see slower moving areas of rain. Look at what happens with the precipitation over the next few days. Rainfall continues to move up through the south overnight into Sunday. We will see rain further eastwards. It's not that eastern areas see no rain, it just might be a bit drier into next week. We continue to see those areas of rain spiraling around. The low pressure system really doesn't move much from being positioned right over the Republic of Ireland. And that is because of that Scandinavian high and that block that is starting to build. Weather systems are starting to move in from more of a south to southeasterly direction. The flow is starting to reverse, low pressure coming up against high pressure to our east. The models show this low pressure not moving into the North Sea like we normally expect with a stronger jet stream. It kind of moves in, fizzles away, and clears to our north. And that S, because these lows approach off the Atlantic, push in, and don't really make much success at all. Through the coming days, we are going to see rainfall. We are going to stay reasonably unsettled. But slowly, that high pressure to our northeast will have more and more influence. By the end of next week, especially in the east, we could definitely be under the influence more of that higher pressure, colder, frostier, and foggier. Then in the subsequent days, we could start to turn colder and maybe even more wintry. Let me show you the temperature outlook. Tonight, frost in the north. Further southwards, mid-single digits. Saturday afternoon, 7 to 8 degrees in the south, average to maybe just above average. Colder further north. Into Sunday, frosts where it is chilly. Sunday afternoon, 6 to 10 degrees. Into Monday, again, frost with clearer skies, cloud and a bit of rain, a little bit milder. Afternoon temperatures, again, mid to high single digits. Tuesday, frosts in the west, a little bit colder there. Further eastwards, mid to high single digits, really not deviating too far from average. Some areas slightly cooler, some areas slightly milder. Nothing too unexpected for the time of year, but later next week, you can start to see colder air just out to our east. Colder lower level air and generally colder upper air sitting off screen to our east. That will slowly start to push in. It's not very cold initially, but it is cooler, chillier. Lower dew points as well. You can see it starting to nudge our way. That S, the sign for it turning a bit colder towards the end of the month. Now, there's still quite a lot of uncertainty within the model runs. Some runs come the end of next working week into next weekend, so in only 7 days' time, already have cold or even very cold air starting to move in from the east. Other runs are a little bit more skeptical and have more of a battleground scenario. That Scandinavian high trying to push easterlies our way, but instead the Atlantic S able to hold on. Although it remains cool, it S not mild at all. It S more unsettled and would probably be that cold but rainy pattern, not a wintry pattern, as very cold air stays over the continent. A lot of uncertainty as we head towards the end of January. But it is definitely looking like it is going to be turning colder, maybe even very cold. There is definitely a window opening for more snowy and wintry weather, especially into the final 5 or 6 days of January and into early February. Let me show you what the different models are suggesting. The GFS has been fairly bullish over the past few days for very cold conditions. The operational run shows the high pressure really starts to take over towards Scandinavia over the coming days. It is not quite in an orientation to pull in bitterly cold easterlies initially. It just halts the jet stream and doesn't really allow much to move in. But look at this, in around 7 to 8 days' time, the GFS is showing bitterly cold easterly winds with heavy snow showers, most likely piling in from the North Sea. Now, the high pressure does collapse actually quite quickly there. So yes, it could be cold and snowy for a couple of days, but eventually it would be a drier, colder pattern. Interestingly, that high pressure system collapses temporarily, but rebuilds. And we see another spell of easterly winds as we head into the final few days of the month and into early February, with another push of cold or even very cold air. We not tapping into the really bitterly cold beast from the east type air masses quite yet. Not quite tapping into that at this time frame, but we getting close. It is very cold in this scenario. Initially slightly milder, but stays chilly under the high pressure. Then another spell of very cold air late January to early February. We not seeing terribly consistent runs from the GFS in terms of the exact details, but easterly winds we are seeing in pretty much every run. Yes, there is the odd run that S not successful, but most runs are successful in pulling an easterly wind. Given the high-level synoptics and that cold air looks like it is guaranteed to drift into Eastern Europe, if we see an easterly wind, there's quite a high chance it's cold, if not very cold. The ECMWF has been a bit more mixed. Some days it's been very cold, setting up a very cold pattern. Other days, not so much. You can see that high pressure up to our northeast starting to dominate. It's a battle between westerlies and easterlies. Out towards day 10, it S showing the cold but unsettled pattern. We've still got the block up to our north, but it is not strong enough to pull in very cold air from the east. Instead, we end up with cold but rainy conditions, with low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. We not in terribly cold air masses, not terribly mild air masses either, but it's one of those scenarios where weather fronts will be pushing in, coming up against that cold block, the very cold air remaining in the North Sea or just across the near continent. For us, cold rain, 4, 5, 6 degrees, maybe 7 degrees, with heavy rain, heavy bands of rain moving through, a more miserable but colder pattern. The ECMWF is not quite as quick to turn to an easterly later next week. It keeps it very unsettled into next week. Looks like a battleground scenario setting up with a battle between low pressure off the Atlantic and high pressure to our northeast. Eventually, easterlies do win. But because it is more of a battleground scenario, we were not going to pull in the very cold easterly winds. We pull in cold air, but because it's not as much of a long fetch, direct, long-lasting easterly, a lot of that very cold air doesn't get tugged all the way to Western Europe. Instead, we see colder air, big battles going on. Towards the end of the run, we do see a really brisk, strong easterly wind. There'd be heavy snowfall with a low sinking southwards. But it is a lot more of a marginal pattern. It's all because the lows are a little bit stronger. The rain to snow or colder to less cold line is right over the UK. So it would be a battle with that line moving back and forth. A bit of a messy scenario, but it would be cold. There would be some wintriness around. I want to mention the AIFS model as well, that S, the ECMWF artificial intelligence model. It's using machine learning rather than physics equations. It looks at the starting conditions right now and historically what has happened. It offers a different way of forecasting. When we see a big difference between the physics-driven models and the AI machine learning models, it is worth paying attention. The AIFS has been very much on board with that easterly flow. Those lows sink south. Unlike some of the other models, they don't push eastwards. They slide down towards the Mediterranean. Towards the end of this run, we see very cold easterly winds with low pressure trying to penetrate across from the Atlantic but not having any success. We stay in that very cold air pretty much from next weekend for the whole of the following week, eventually ending up with an even colder easterly by the end of that. Doesn't mean this is definitely going to happen, but the data-driven machine learning model is definitely on board with this pattern, with that easterly winning out. If we look at the ensemble members, the GFS ensembles show average to above average temperatures over the coming days. For London, 7 to 8 to 9 degrees, a degree or two above average, but nothing too crazy, not really that noticeable. By the middle to end of next week, we trend close to average and then eventually come next weekend below average. This is where some of those runs start to put in an easterly. Most on TS about a quarter to a fifth, but slowly more and more into the final week of January, there are a lot of much colder runs. The ensemble mean gets down close to -4 to -5 Celsius. So it's a fairly strong cold signal, but I wouldn't say it's locked in, as there still are milder runs. We would expect it to be locked in anyway, being 7 to 10 days away. There are those very cold runs, those more beast from the east like runs, -10 and lower. The operational is at that level. There are runs showing this, but not an overwhelming number. They are oscillating in frequency between the ensemble runs. Maybe 7 or 8, maybe 9 or 10 at most, get down to that level at some point. That is a lot, but it's not an overwhelming number that we say. It is definitely a favoured scenario. It is definitely the most favoured it's been all winter for that sort of depth of cold. But it is by no means guaranteed a locked-in pattern at this stage. Definitely real interest, and it has trended that way this week. The ECMWF ensembles are very similar, a drop-off longer term, maybe not quite as cold with its general ensembles, but it has got quite a few very cold runs as well. Similar to the GFS, but overall slightly milder than the GFS with more runs closer to average. Still slightly below average, just not quite as cold as those GFS runs. Maybe less bullish for a strong easterly. The AIFS ensemble members are very much on board with that colder or bitterly cold pattern. The ensemble mean is probably even colder than the GFS by a degree or two, down towards -5, maybe -6. There are a lot more runs down towards the -8 to -10 range. A good cluster still -10 and below, including the operational AIFS model. The point of inflection for that very cold air to move in is in around a week's time. I suspect in the next 2 or 3 days, we'll have a much better idea on the timings of the potential easterly or cold easterly. It is going to slowly turn towards an easterly flow even over the coming days. The depth of cold as well. I think we'll have a bit of a breakthrough in the coming days where we either go one way or the other. Either we see that cold signal strengthen. All models come on board, and it's more 70 to 80% showing very cold than the 30 or 40% showing very cold right now. Or we go the other way, where the very cold becomes more of a minority option. We see more of a battleground scenario. It very much is at odds at the moment. I don't really want to call it because of the amount of times these have failed over the past few years, but there is a lot of interest. I think that final 5 days of January maybe not as early as the 23rd or 24th, but 25th, 26th onwards into early February, I think there is a pretty strong chance it turns much colder. If it turns very cold, down towards those ice day levels, then of course a high chance of seeing further wintriness. With an easterly wind, that wintriness would be a lot more widespread and potentially a lot more severe for areas that didn't see much at all earlier on in January. Now, you've seen worse than this. Many of you remember the beast from the east back in 2018. Siberian air, -14 Celsius in places, significant snow, or the Great Storm of 87, gusts over 100 miles per hour, or the Burns Day Storm in 90, 107 mile per hour gusts. What we are looking at here is not at that level. Not yet, anyway. But it does deserve attention. It's not the end of the world. Winter means cold and wet. This isn't unprecedented, but it is a significant pattern change from what we've been experiencing. So what should you be doing to prepare? Let's be practical about this. If you're in areas that don't typically see much snow, southern England in particular, this sort of cold easterly is unusual for you. Most people keep snow shovels to hand down there, and that's fair enough. If you can, work from home towards the end of next week if this materialises. The roads want to be gritted as thoroughly as they would be up north. For those in Scotland, you're already dealing with the coldest conditions. You know what you are doing. But be aware that if we do get a proper easterly setup, the east coast could see heavy snow showers piling in from the North Sea. That is a different pattern from what you've had so far this winter. Check on elderly neighbours and relatives. Temperature swings have been making people poorly for weeks. Sinus trouble, headaches. If we get sustained cold moving in, at least it's consistent rather than this back and forth pattern we've had. If you haven't already, make sure you've got supplies in. Not panic buying, just sensible preparation. Bread, milk, tinned goods, enough to last a few days if travel becomes difficult. Check your car, screen wash that works in minus temperatures, a torch in the boot, a blanket, charged mobile phone. If your car gets stuck in snow, cardboard or an old carpet under the tires increases traction. Works a treat. Many of you probably already know this old trick. Keep your heating on low if you're re-going out. Prevents pipes freezing. Costs less to maintain temperature than to reheat a cold house. For those with health conditions, especially respiratory problems, cold air can make things worse. Have your medications ready, know where your nearest support is. And look, I know some of you in East Anglia have been waiting for some proper winter weather. You've gone several winters without a decent covering in some areas. This pattern has potential, but I'm not going to promise anything until we see how these systems develop. The uncertainty is still high. We are 7 to 10 days out. Models can and do change, but the signal is there. The Scandinavian high is building. The jet stream is being pushed south. Cold air is sitting over Eastern Europe. If we get an easterly wind, there's a good chance it's cold. I'll be keeping a close eye on the model runs over the next few days. By Monday or Tuesday, we should have a much clearer picture of whether this is going to be a significant cold spell or whether it remains more of a battleground scenario with the Atlantic managing to hold on. One way or another, it's going to be colder than it has been. Whether it is properly cold with snow and ice or just a bit chilly with rain, that is what we are waiting to see. I'll have another update for you in a couple of days once we've got more clarity from the models. Until then, keep an eye on the Met Office warnings. They'll be the first to issue alerts if this develops. As some of the models are suggesting, stay safe, stay warm,